Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. This is brought to you by Willow Creek Springs, and I am Joe Grumbine, your host. And I'm going to do a little something different today. We've come in at the end of our first year of doing this podcast. And first of all, we'll get rid of that background so you can actually see things for what they are. Anyways, I've been hosting this show now for a year. We've had over 40 guests, and I'm really happy with the way the show is going. But as a host, one of the things that I've been doing is trying to make time for the other guests to speak. And, if you know me, that might be a little difficult thing because I certainly like to talk. But I'm learning, we all want to be better. We all want to be more healthy. And part of that is, working on yourself. That's actually a central theme of this show. So I'm going to come on today, both as a host and, the guest as well. And I want to introduce myself. So, I've been doing this show for about a year. I've been doing my life version of this Healthy Living Network for most of my life, or at least half of it. So I want to introduce myself. My name's Joe Grumbine. I'm 57 years old, and I've spent a good portion of my life trying to be healthy or more healthy. Now, that doesn't mean I've been successful. I've had all kinds of problems. I've made every possible mistake life has to make, and I'm going to share some of those with you in upcoming episodes. But there came a point in my 20s where I got tired of Western medicine and I began to explore natural medicine. And it all started with a book. And, this is in the late 80s, before we had internet, before we had computers or cell phones or any of that stuff. And I was working as a commercial painter. And so I was on different jobs all over the place, just some days I'd work the same job for a week or a month, but never too long in the same place. And in those old days, we had these things called bookstores. I think we still have some of them now, but wherever we went, it seemed that there was a bookstore nearby, a used bookstore, not just a Barron's or whatever the new bookstores were. And I would go into them, and it would be like exploring, I don't know, a cave or an old haunted house or something for me, because I'd be looking through all these old books and thinking back to as a child, my love for reading. I grew up learning how to read early and just loved to read. Anyways, walking through these bookstores, I discovered, there was all these old herbals. And so I started buying them, 20 cents, 50 cents, a buck or two, and created quite a collection of books. Began reading them and studying, and then ordering plant seeds, and sort of began a journey of natural medicine. Well, at that point, I was a kid. I had been fortunate enough to live in my own house, so I was able to landscape my own yard and created a working herb garden and began to make extractions, started looking at all these books and seeing recipes in them. I said, well, you know what, let's try them out. And, this is over the course of a couple of years, and started making teas and tinctures and, different extracts of things. And come to find out that there was value. Now, I grew up as a child of a surgeon, so Western medicine I was well aware of. And Didn't like it. I didn't like medicine. I had a lung condition. I was always, getting allergy shots and asthma medicine and all of this stuff. And that's really where it came out of. I just got tired of how it made me feel and said, well, maybe there's got to be some other way. Well, at that point, I was connected with a massage therapist. My ex was going through nursing school, so I had connection to a bunch of nursing students, and began talking and teaching what I learned, and sort of became known in my local neighborhood as the guy who has a thing that might be able to help you. Now, at the same time, I started growing cannabis in the mid 80s, and I ran into a recipe for a liniment, a Mexican recipe, and it was an alcohol extraction recipe, and I just decided, why don't I use a drinkable alcohol instead of rubbing alcohol? And I think that was some kind of a divine inspiration because back at that time, there wasn't a whole lot of extraction going on in that arena. And since I had a bunch of leftovers, it was easy for me to have material to use. And I began a journey um, that started in cannabis extraction and making tinctures and liqueurs and all sorts of things that took me all the way to where I am today. And really that's where I've come from. Now that's 35 years ago. Along the way, I've started teaching courses. And it's funny because I never went to college, or not didn't ever complete college, I should say. And so I have no degrees, I have no bona fides, no certificates on the wall, but what I have is a lot of trial and error, a lot of life experience. And for me, I never liked school. I hated school. Went to school and, was smart enough. I did good enough when I put my attention to it. But I never liked being there and never wanted to be there. I didn't like taking tests. I didn't like any of that. But I like doing things. I like to experiment. I like to try it. And so that's what I learned was my better school. And I was never afraid to fail. I had lots of fears and learned how to walk into them over time. And we'll talk about some of that stuff in here as well. But I was looking at what brought me here to this show, and it was really my quest for knowledge, my quest for experience, my quest to figure things out and find out. And it's gotten me into plenty of trouble over the years, and we'll talk about some of those stories, and I'm sure they're amusing by now. But I would rather try something and know that it works or doesn't work, or maybe have a hope that it does, than just read about it and be a book learned expert. It all starts with the knowledge of the people that have done what you've done before, but then how does discovery happen? How does every invention happen? It starts with a thought, an idea, and then trial and error. And the Thomas Edison's lesson always inspired me of 10,000 failures. I was like, wow, shit, if he can do it, I can certainly fail 10,000 times. There's no problem with that. So over time, I just tried and did more and more things. I started making formulas, started documenting what we were doing different extractions, started working with other healers and practitioners and even doctors. And over time, I began working with some compounding pharmacists and even more and more skilled expert guys that were working in testing labs, PhDs, and chemists, people that knew what the hell they were doing. And then I'd walk in with my experience, and lo and behold, turns out I knew a thing or two. And so this whole journey brought me into starting the business Willow Creek Springs. Again, this is over 20 years ago now. My wife started making natural skincare products as a result of her um, nerve damage to her face from an injury when she was a kid, and ultimately jumping ahead to where we are today, where I formulate all kinds of different products. I work and have worked with a number of different physicians, practitioners, and now this year we started Gardens of Hope, where we took our 2.5 acre backyard that we've been landscaping or working on for 20 years, and we've opened it up as a 501c3 for what we're calling therapeutic horticulture. And the idea of that is really just the garden is healing, the garden is therapeutic. You can learn, you can heal, you can work through, you can just get better using the garden, and not just the effort of gardening, but also the idea of growing and cultivating, nurturing, harvesting, preparing, and consuming food and medicine naturally grown in the garden. And so that's all happening now. And that's what this podcast, blog, community is all about. And so I'm going to be telling stories of my experiences as we're going through. I hope that you find it entertaining and enjoyable enough to listen along. More importantly, I'm hoping that you want to join and come on and be a guest or contribute something to the blog. The idea of a community is a guy like me who is nuts and willing to just keep going when nobody thinks it's important. But I know that it is. I know that what we're doing works. I know that we're bringing the people together that can help each other. I know that that is a higher calling and a greater good. And so I would love to invite you to join me as a guest. I would love to invite you as a contributor to the blog. I would also love to invite you to come and experience the garden in Paris, California, and maybe participate, maybe be an instructor or a practitioner, or um, who knows? The sky's the limit. That's really what brings me here. The sky is the limit. I know that my experiences in life and what I'm learning, frankly, at 57, I have different ambitions than I did when I was 47, 37, 27, 17, 7, or even younger. Now I would really want to live a long time and be healthy. I want to be able to experience and enjoy the life with the time that I have here on the planet. I believe there's no reason I can't live to be more than 115 years old and still have mobility and good quality of life. I've seen it happen, and I'm exploring, doing some biohacking and experimenting and learning. And for those of you who don't notice, I've got a big old lump on the side of my neck, and we'll be talking about that and my efforts to make it go away, and dealing with something as horrible, ugly, disfiguring, hopefully not life-threatening as this, walking the walk and sharing my experience. So hopefully you join me and find this entertaining, and I will talk to you the next time. You're going to see more and more of these episodes because they're going to be shorter, hopefully more focused. And please share your comments. Let me know what you think. All right. Thank you for joining the Healthy Living Podcast, sponsored by Willow Creek Springs.